listening to the Critical Mass Radio Show, Orange County's business talk show, focused on exploring topics of interest to CEOs who are leading middle market companies. With your host, Richard Franzi.
And welcome to this edition of Critical Mass Radio Show. I am your host, Richard Franzi, and this is podcast episode number 1024. How do you select the best talent for your company? With countless piles of resumes and endless interviews, how can you be confident that you are not missing out on a crucial addition to your team? With an expertise in talent management and recruitment, Guy Chanin, founder of GAMECHANGERS, helps to deliver key workers to high-profile companies. I've asked him to join us today to discuss his unique approach to finding new hires in the apparel industry. Guy, welcome to Critical Mass Radio Show and Podcast.
Thank you, Rick.
It's great to have you here in the studio.
It's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
You know, we love reviews of our show on your favorite podcasting software, ladies and gentlemen, and this is a great way to help others like you find our show. You know, since we started our show in 2009, we've reached several 100,000 listeners through our live stream, podcast, and our other channels. If you wouldn't mind taking a minute and writing a short review, we would greatly appreciate it. All right, Guy, let's start by, can you tell us a story about your professional background, sort of get us to know you a little bit better?
Sure.
Okay.
Well, look, Rick, if I met you 5 years ago and you told me I was going to be a recruiter in my industry, I would have called you crazy.
Okay.
I never imagined in a million years that you would act or actually be in this profession.
Okay.
But I guess it's crazy sometimes wild things happen in one's career. Before starting GAMECHANGERS about 4.5 years ago, I reached a point in my career where I wanted to do something quite meaningful and take the 22 years of experience that I had in manufacturing, wholesale, retail, and licensing, and do something that would be really a game changer in a specific industry. Turns out that you sometimes become what you have a disdain for. I never liked recruiters.
Okay.
I was always, recruiters always used to call me and try and get me to, change companies or change jobs.
Right.
And I always found it to be very transactional. Didn't really have any substance to it. It was always about just, hey, how quickly can I get this guy to agree that there is a better opportunity out there? I was always someone who really prided myself on cultivating, coaching, and mentoring people as a leader in the companies that I worked.
Okay.
So I obviously a light bulb went off, and I was like, why don't I do this for a living? Why don't I do this where I can actually change people's lives, give them a chance at expanding and evolving in their careers, and still be able to participate in an industry that has given me so much. So
you were in the apparel industry.
Yes.
But you had a wide range of experience in that industry from the way you talked about the different areas of expertise that you had.
That's correct. So the first 10 years, I really cut my teeth in downtown Los Angeles, really in the bowels of the garment trade, and I really learned along the way what it is like to kind of operate in a world of manufacturing. That's where my operational background came in.
Got it.
But when I left downtown LA, I came down to Orange County to work at Quicksilver for 10 years.
Oh, much more civilized environment then.
It was a much more sexier proposition. You had great brands, amazing people, and the lifestyle that really suited my taste level. So I really had an amazing 10 years experience there. I was a vice president of merchandise and design, and subsequently became a senior vice president of their direct to retail business.
Okay.
So what it allowed me to do is have this operational background and this creative background, and I can really talk to people that are looking to maybe transition and truly understand what they do and how they can impact organizations. And that's how we are able to become successful. Okay,
so when that light bulb went on, your term, that you thought, well, maybe I could do this in the industry, where were you and what were you doing? What was the precipitating event that caused that light bulb?
Good question. So I was working at a company called Hybrid Apparel. They actually had courted me from GAMECHANGERS. Courted me from Quicksilver. And I was there for 3 years as their chief merchandising officer. But like I said, I was thirsting to do something in the industry and do something independent.
Okay.
So what happened is a good friend of mine was on the East Coast, or is on the East Coast, and he is a recruiter in the legal space. He places lawyers and attorneys in big law firms across the Northeast. And we went out for dinner one night, and he said to me, Guy, why don't you become a recruiter? And I, like I told you, I said, you're crazy, Mark. There's no way I'll ever become a recruiter. Just so happens I did some research. I looked at the notion of being able to really coach and mentor people in the way that I have loved to do most of my career.
Right.
And I thought, wait a minute, if I can help people find work and I can help clients or companies find great people and I can make a living in it, it's a true win-win-win.
Right.
And I love that.
Right. And in my experience, you're helping the individual through a very difficult time, right? I mean, I've always believed it's more important for the candidate to make the right decision on where to go to work than it is for the company to make the decision on who to hire, because they have to live with their decision as an individual, right? And it can take them in a different track of their career than they had intended. So the work that you're doing, I think, is as important to the employer, but also to the candidate, to the employee as well.
Thank you for saying that. We do find that what we do is we have a responsibility both to candidate and to clients.
Right.
And so the candidate, we have to speak very frankly about them. Do they have the aptitude? Do they have the right attitude? And sometimes it takes a little bit of reconditioning and maybe some rehabilitation,
Right.
especially people who are tenured, because the industry has changed, but the people haven't.
I wanted to ask you about that. I mean, Game Changers has been in business how long now?
4.5 years.
4.5 years.
Yes.
My sense from reading the headlines and hearing what's going on is the apparel industry has been going through some changes in those 4.5
Correct.
years. You know, the online, there's a lot that's going on in the marketplace.
Yes.
How are you, in your role, able to help companies determine what talent they need and people determine where they really should go, which is the best move for their career?
Well, the apparel industry has seen a lot of contraction, and part of that is just because of the economic situation. I think there's been a lot of pullback in terms of consumer spending, and so it's really affected retail, and we've seen the retail community suffer as a result of people maybe trading down, not spending as much money in the luxury and the mid-tier, but more going to the mass and to the clubs like Costco and BJ's and Sam's Club, etc. And so what happens is there's not a lot of market share out there, and so it's added a lot of compression and attrition to our industry. But there are still people that participate in our space. There are still companies that are making product and brands that have survived and weathered kind of the storm, especially since 2008. And you could argue that companies will always talk about product, how important product is, but we know that great product is built by great people.
Yes.
And not only the building of great product, but also the entire process from seed to store. And so that's where we come in. We want to be a differentiator. We don't want to be like any of the other recruiting agencies out there. We want to be able to give them quality people and people that really have been rehabilitated or really truly understand what the rules of engagement are for being a successful entity in a successful organization.
You know, we don't have time to get into it today here on the radio show, but it is a conversation I'd like to have with you. I'm doing research for a book that'll come out in the future on how small and middle market companies create differentiation that allows them to compete effectively against larger companies. And one of the strategies is really identifying with extreme care the niche that you want to participate in. And to me, as an entrepreneur, it sounds like you've done that by very clearly identifying one industry that you're an expert in, that you're going to recruit and place talent in.
Well, correct. I mean, we understand relationships are the key to all business, and I think it's almost reiterated several times in your book about the power of CEO guiding principles. I think we had a few people that spoke a lot about relationships and how important that is to business. So because of the fact that we come from the inside the industry, our recruiters, including myself, we have amazing relationships where people will rely on us and will trust us to be able to find people that truly understand their business. The apparel industry is very complex, as we know it. So, most of the people that you find in recruitment come from human resources, or they come from a place where they think it's a quick way to make a buck. But you have to live and breathe and sleep and eat the clothing industry to truly understand it.
Right.
And so that's where we think that is our unique proposition. That's our unique differentiator.
Are you focused in Southern California? Are you what's your space?
It's national. We do a lot of business on the East Coast. We have some pretty big accounts in the Northeast as well as on the East Coast. But we also recruit from the EU. So a lot of companies that are looking for special talents that they may not find here, we will find in other global organizations. A lot of the companies we do business with have global footprints. They have businesses in Asia Pacific, they have it in Europe, and especially here in the Americas.
Right.
So, the world's become a very small place, and so it's hard to say that you're just pinpointed to one specific market, but we do work nationally from both coast to coast.
And Guy, you remind me that, and I know this, but it reminded me that, when you talk about the apparel industry, you're really talking about a manufacturing footprint, right? I mean, you're designing it, and that's the sexy part. You're advertising it, you're putting it in a shop, but you got to get the stuff made.
Well, that's a big part of it, but a lot of the outsourcing and offshoring that happened in the end of the 90s, towards the end of the 90s,
Yes.
really forced a lot of manufacturing offshore or out of the country. And so what you need is skilled people to be able to manage the supply chain here domestically,
Yes.
and truly understanding product and technical garment construction. You can't have somebody do it for you across the waters. So there is a heavy focus on skilled labor here with the wholesalers, with the brands, and especially vertical retail. There are a lot of vertical retailers that make product for their own stores.
Right.
And so there has to be that skill set, and you can't offshore that.
Wow.
That's something that we have here.
See, you're just demonstrating your depth of knowledge in this industry, which is so exciting to me. And it's a teachable moment here on Critical Mass Radio Show. We're going to take our first and only short commercial break. It's actually not a commercial. It's just a message for one of the products or services that I do with my business, Critical Mass. Those loyal listeners know that we're going to be back very quickly with Guy. And I'm going to ask you your guiding principle question. In other words, of all the things that you've learned, what is your overarching philosophy for how you're taking Game Changers into the future? Can you answer that when we get back?
Sure.
All right, don't go anywhere, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be right back after this word from me.
If you are an Orange County business executive, this message is for you. Do you ever feel isolated with no place to turn for advice or feedback? Who holds you accountable to your commitments in your company? Where do you find the right resources to help you and your company grow? If you have these questions, then Critical Mass for Business might be the answer for you. Critical Mass for Business is committed to helping you make better decisions. These are groups of peers running businesses just like you, providing a great sounding board to test ideas and concepts, review plan and goals, and present issues and opportunities for discussion. The result is improved strategy, accountability, people, and execution skills. If you are interested in learning more, go to www.criticalmassforbusiness.com and learn more about our executive peer group.
And welcome back to this edition of Critical Mass Radio Show. I am your host, Richard Franzi. We're broadcasting live on octalkradio.net. So if you're listening to us on iTunes or Stitcher or one of the other platforms, maybe you want to catch the live show once in a while. Or if you're a visual learner, you can check us out on octalkradio.net's fan page on Facebook as he live streams each of these episodes while they're happening. So I'd love for you to take us in on the live version once in a while. All right, Guy, before the break, I said I was going to ask you to share your guiding principle philosophy that you're using to take Game Changers into the future. What is that?
Well, it's hard to be original here because, there's so many great chapters in your book that talk about, all the CEOs sharing their guiding principles. One of them, obviously, which I'd mentioned already, relationships. We are in a relationship business. We don't manufacture a product. We don't carry inventory of a product. What we do is we are really a service, and that service is greatly reliant on the relationships and the network that we have. So I said that's a very important guiding principle for us, or especially for me in Game Changers, in nurturing and building lasting and meaningful and sustainable relationships. But if I have to really add to that, I mean, there's something to be said about humility. That's something that the recruiting team and I really talk about a lot. And it's not just humility in of itself. It's about ego and certainly a lot, and pride. And we get to really see that a lot with candidates or profiles that have been tenured in the business, that think they've kind of been there, done that, or they just think that they don't need to get their hands dirty again because they've been in the industry a long time.
They're past that.
And so we talk about legacy, and we talk about legacy not only within within our company, but also with the people that we are trying to coach. What is your legacy? What is it that you want people to remember you by? And it can't be on successful business initiatives that you worked on 5 years ago or 10 years ago. It's really what you do today and tomorrow that will create your legacy, will truly define you. And so we talk about that a lot, and that is definitely a guiding principle of mine.
So you've mentioned several times, and I'm neglected to ask you, but can you tell me the footprint of Game Changers? I mean, you talked about the recruiters. I mean, how are you staffed?
Well, best-in-class recruiters are people that come from within the industry. So, we have a team of 4 recruiters. Keep it very small and boutique. We're not looking to become the boiler room of recruitment, because then what happens is you become like everybody else.
Yeah, that's kind of your strategy.
But we have someone from the Nike organization, we have someone from the Hurley and Fox organization, we have someone from the ASICS organization. So what we've done is we've brought in people that truly understand our space, that understand people and the emotional dynamic of human beings, not just the logical side.
Okay.
And like I said, we don't really call ourselves recruiters. We're talent managers, and we try and manage the talent that we find in a way that's very different. We try and, like I said, we coach them, we cultivate them, we mentor them, we really point them in the direction to market themselves in a way that they can really fulfill their dreams in their career.
So question for the recruiters on your team: were they doing recruiting in these different institutions, or were they like you, not a recruiter before you tapped them on the shoulder? I mean,
in this case, actually they all had touched recruitment, but that was not their only function.
Okay.
I mean, they did participate on an administrative level in their organizations, but they're equally passionate about changing people's lives.
Right.
And to me, that is the ultimate filter for us, is finding people that actually care about helping people find jobs. And that is the reason why we're able to be successful.
That's awesome. Thank you. I knew it was going to be a good interview. Okay, so the last question here on Critical Mass Radio Show, well, actually I have 2, but the last substantive one. You've talked about a unique approach, I believe. I believe it is a differentiated way, and you and your team are living that. Take us back. How does that translate to the type of reputation and the way you do your business in the apparel industry? Because I think one of the challenges is you have to be careful that your brand is always left in positive terms with the people that you're interfacing with, right? Because you're probably going to go back to them in the future, or you'd like for them to reach out to you in the future. So what is your unique approach to kind of finding new hires and talent within the apparel industry?
There's a few answers to that, but I think the one that sticks out the most is that for the longest time, when you were screening or looking for people, you wanted to make sure that they could do the job first. And so you always would screen their aptitude. Can they come in and do the job? Can they do the blocking and tackling? Do they understand the idiosyncrasies of process? And that's always important. But there's something that the team and I really focused on more so than the aptitude, was the attitudes component, which was this kind of soft skills that people always talked about, but it wasn't really not kind of front and center in why you hire people.
Right.
Now, you can't really teach someone to be to have integrity, or have a moral compass. You can't.
No, you cannot.
And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to understand a person's, how ambitious they are, what's their sense of urgency, what is their value system, what drives them as a human being. And by better understanding the human psychology, the human being behind it all, we can teach them process. You can teach them how to to do a job, but you can't teach them how to inspire other people, or to be collaborative, or to be a sharer. And so we try and really have a unique approach to really truly understanding the person behind the resume.
Right.
And the resume will tell you all the things that you know already, which is the experience, and I grew the business X
accomplishments,
amount, accomplishments, and this is what I can do, and you look for that,
right? And
you have to screen for that.
Yes.
But we want to know more about the person, because you hire the wrong person and you have a culture vulture in your company.
Ooh.
It can have a really catastrophic effect on your business, and we can't afford that.
Right. Or on the other side, if the candidate gets hired and they don't fit the culture, they could be the best star performer, and they probably will not be happy in the environment, and they may not achieve their level of potential because they just were a bad fit. So again, it comes back to my point where I think it's as important to place the people in the right environment for them as it is to get the company the right person who can do the job and fit their culture. It's equally balanced, and many times we forget about the employee. Not you, but in the industry, because we're just looking to the employer many times.
Yeah, and a lot of times you look, they're defined by job description. And so it doesn't ever talk about, well, we want this person to have a value system of collaboration and sharing and open-mindedness and so
right. Willing to take risks and challenges, right?
Sure,
right.
and be entrepreneurial. Those things we have to kind of sniff out and find.
Right.
And so we have a very different screening and vetting process.
Yeah, because my experience, and I'm nowhere near with what, and I mostly was on the hiring side of it, but you can, as a hiring organization, you can telegraph what you're looking for in those soft skills. And of course, a good candidate will tell you that, oh yeah, I'm very entrepreneurial, and yeah, I love to collaborate. What are they going to say? No, right? But if they're not, and you don't find that out during the interview process, you may be disappointed when they come into the company.
It's true. So we have, again, the responsibility now to the company
right.
to make sure that when we're sending profiles that we have really done our homework and we've done the right vetting and screening so that we're sending them quality people,
right.
not just quality candidates.
Excellent. Well, if someone would like to learn more about Game Changers, how do they find your brand online?
On GameChangersUS.com. So it's www.GAMECHANGERSUS.com.
Okay.
And we have all our social media outlets there. There's an About Us section that talks about why I started Game Changers, and there's a lot of really great content and a lot of job opportunities. There's a job board there too.
Okay.
So people can jump on there and look for work.
Right. So I hope they will.
I hope so too.
Well, thank you for giving of your time. Welcome to the Critical Mass community.
Thank you.
Thanks for being a friend of our program and sharing a bit of what you're doing as an entrepreneur and building Game Changers. I really enjoyed this conversation today.
Likewise, Rick. Thank you.
Thank you, Guy. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to thank our engineer for today, Paul Roberts, and our producers are Joan Park, Crystal Nunley, and Haley Stern. If you want to connect with me on Twitter, my handle is CEO Peer Groups. On LinkedIn and YouTube, I'm Richard Franzi. And on Facebook and our website, it's criticalmass4FORbusiness.com. That's our social media footprint. I hope you'll reach out to me directly or to the company. And until our next show, I hope all of your business decisions will move your company in a positive direction.
You have been listening to Critical Mass Radio Show Business Talk Show, focused on exploring topics of interest to CEOs who are leading middle market companies. With your host, Richard Franzi.